Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into the sweltering sands of ancient Egypt, not to marvel at pyramids or admire golden sarcophagi, but to live quite painfully like an ordinary person. Picture this. The sun isn't even above the horizon yet, but your tiny clay home is already stuffy. Your straw mat scratches at your back, and your nose is full of dust. The Nile's morning breeze doesn't reach you here. Welcome to a place where gods abound, but decent plumbing is unheard of. You've just woken up, and already you probably regret it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening in bed, I'd love to know your location and local time. It's always fascinating to imagine where you all are tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first light of dawn leaks into your cramped home, slipping through the gaps in mudbrick walls, and waking you with a gentle brightness that feels like a spotlight in your tired eyes. You slept curled next to two cousins, an old aunt, and at least one small goat. No one else stirs yet, but the air already hums with anticipation, or maybe just the flies. You sit up, rubbing your shoulder where a reed mat left an imprint. Your back aches, not from a long day, but from a long life. You're 19. In ancient Egyptian terms, you're practically middle-aged. The average lifespan isn't generous here, 35, if you're lucky and avoid infection, crocodiles, and plagues of locusts. The ceiling is low and made from woven palm stalks. It sways slightly as if breathing. The dust on it, that's your ceiling fan. Any slight breeze sends a gentle drizzle of particles onto your head, an exfoliation treatment nobody asked for. Outside, the Nile yawns. Mist rises from the river like a spirit. You can hear oars slapping the water. Early traders moving upriver, already shouting instructions. You consider how they probably have breakfast. Must be nice. Instead, your first task is to stumble toward the corner where a small ceramic pot waits. It's your chamber pot. Dignity. That's for the priests and their golden wigs. You relieve yourself quickly, all while hoping no one else wakes up and demands the pot next. Once outside, your bare feet touch the earth, cool briefly before the sun starts its slow roast. The chickens have escaped again. They always do. They're barely yours anyway, and every neighbor claims them when they lay eggs. You stretch bones creaking like dry papyrus. Insects chirp from somewhere in the reeds. A heron lands nearby, graceful and unbothered. You, on the other hand, scratch at a mosquito bite that's already swelling on your ankle. Down by the riverbank, a group of older women are already washing laundry, slapping it rhythmically against flat stones and gossiping in low musical tones. One of them shouts about a dream she had something involving Anubis and a goat. Everyone laughs. You smile faintly, then yawn. Your chores haven't started, but neither has your breakfast. In the village, smoke begins curling from clay chimneys as others start their cooking fires. You know what's coming: flat bread that's already stale and beer sour thick and laced with sediment. It's nutritious, allegedly, but also a bit like drinking porridge that lost a bet. Historians still argue whether the beer of ancient Egypt was actually palatable or just tolerated because it kept people hydrated. What they agree on: it was consumed daily, and lots of it. You look toward the rising sun. It's only just above the horizon, and already stabs at your eyes. Another long day lies ahead. Brick making, maybe, or hauling reeds. If you're unlucky temple labor, the gods need constant maintenance, apparently. But for now, you just breathe. You take in the earthy scent of mudbrick, the warm musk of goats, and the sweet rot of the Nile mud. It's quiet in this moment, peaceful almost. That peace will evaporate quickly. But right now, before the full wrath of Ra blazes overhead, you're allowed one final yawn, a scratch behind your ear, and the brief fantasy that maybe today won't be as unbearable as the last. You're not a picky person. But even your modest standards for personal comfort collapse when you confront the reality of toilet arrangements in ancient Egypt. Let's say you're lucky you live in a slightly nicer part of the workers' district. Your home includes a hole-in-the-floor latrine, basically a clay bowl tucked into a corner with a sloped drain that doesn't really drain. It's supposed to channel, let's say, contents into a pit outside the wall. But in reality, the slope is shallow, the pit is often full, and the smell is ever present. More likely, though, you don't have even that. Instead, you've got a ceramic pot, the same one you used last night and had the misfortune of re-encountering this morning. If you're truly diligent, you carry it to the street-side midden heap, dodging dung beetles and foul-smelling runoff from your neighbor's pile. The sun's already hot enough to cook what's been left there. Steam rises, so does your breakfast. You pause to gag, and then you rinse the pot in the Nile. Historians still debate how widely indoor toilets were used in common homes. Evidence suggests wealthier houses had rudimentary sewer connections, but for the majority, chamber pots, pit latrines, were just a quiet corner and strong ankles. You start to envy the crocodiles. At least their bathroom is scenic. Once emptied, your chamber pot returns home with you noble as a war trophy. You set it down next to a jug of beer. It's the same jug you'll drink from in an hour. You try not to think about that. Hygiene in ancient Egypt was a mixed bag. They were obsessed with ritual cleanliness. Priests shaved their entire bodies, even eyebrows, but soap was a luxury, and even that was often just animal fat mixed with ash and sand. If you're poor sand alone, that's right, sand as a cleaning agent. You scour your hands and hope they don't bleed. You wash your face with a splash of river water, which may or may not be downstream from someone else's washing. Then, you grab a palm fiber toothbrush and dip it in natron salt. It's like scrubbing your gums with salty gravel. Your breath smells like a dead sea creature, but hey, at least you don't have modern cavities. As you squat to brush a goat peas nearby, you move 3 inches to the left and continue. Then comes the fun part, helping your cousin with her makeup. She's using ground malachite, bright green, and kohl, the famous black eyeliner that everyone from peasants to pharaohs swears by. Supposedly, it wards off evil spirits and the relentless sun, the application. With a wooden stick that resembles a very judgmental splinter, you smear some on too. Why not? The gods love symmetry, and your face could use a distraction from the mosquito bites. As you re-enter the house, you notice a toddler squatting in the corner. No one reacts. You sigh and return the chamber pot to its place of honor. Throughout the morning, the village smells like baking bread, dung smoke, and human determination. Children run barefoot through puddles of dubious origin. Elderly neighbors sit outside, gnawing on dates and gossiping. A dog with one eye watches you with suspicion, like he knows something about your future and isn't impressed. Someone yells about a broken well bucket. You pretend you didn't hear. Your bucket is also broken, but you're trying denial as a repair strategy. And now, the sun is high enough to melt ambition. Your cousin hands you a rag, actually, just a sun-bleached square of linen, and tells you to get dressed for work. You glance toward the horizon where dust curls like a warning. The mudbricks are calling. But first, maybe, just maybe, a quick stop at the fishmonger for breakfast. Spoiler, it won't help. Ah, yes, breakfast, everyone's favorite meal. Unless you happen to be living in ancient Egypt on a peasant's diet. In that case, it's more of a grim ritual than a culinary delight. You make your way toward the communal oven. Smoke curls from the small dome-shaped structure, its blackened clay, crusted with the ghosts of 1,000 flatbreads. A woman with arms like bread paddles slaps dough onto the sides of the oven with military precision. Each slap puffs ash into the morning air. She hands you a hunk of barely risen bread. It's warm, at least, but gritty from wind-blown sand that no one bothers trying to keep out anymore. One bite, and your teeth meet tiny stones. Chewing sounds like distant percussion. With bread in hand, you move to the next essential beer. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This isn't the golden bubbly pint you might imagine. Egyptian beer, especially for the working class, is thick enough to chew. It's made from half-baked barley loaves mashed into water and left to ferment just enough to make you question your decisions. Strain. Why bother? Sediment builds character. You slurp it down from a clay cup, trying not to gag. It's sour, chunky, and faintly warm. Refreshing in the same way being licked by a tired ox might be. Still, it has calories. And in ancient Egypt, calories are everything. You're going to sweat out twice what you just ate within the hour. You sit on a low stool, or perhaps just a rock, and attempt to savor your meal. Around you, other villagers munch in silence, broken only by the occasional belch or buzz of a fly diving into someone's cup. A child drops his bread into the sand, picks it up, dusts it off with a hand that just rubbed a donkey. Nobody comments. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptian diet was nutritionally balanced. The staples, bread, beer, onions, and fish, offered some sustenance, but malnutrition was rampant. Iron deficiency, common. Tooth decay from sand in the bread. Absolutely. And yet in wall paintings, everyone looks oddly plump. Art lies even when it's carved into limestone. You finish your bread and beer, wiping your mouth with a sleeve that's seen better days. Your cousin hands you a small bundle of onions lunch. You tie it to your belt like a prize. Before leaving, you take a moment to say a quiet prayer at the household shrine. It's a small alcove with a painted image of Taweret, the hippo goddess of childbirth and protection. You aren't pregnant, but she's as good a guardian as any. You murmur a request for safety and maybe cooler weather. You suspect even she thinks that's optimistic. As you prepare to head out, your neighbor's goat charges past, dragging a child who's tied a rope around its neck. They both disappear around a corner. Someone yells after them. A pot breaks. You don't investigate. Instead, you shoulder your reed mat, grab a chipped water jug and step into the already baking sunlight. The Nile glimmers in the distance like a sarcastic promise. Work waits, and so do the blisters. You trudge down the dusty path, trying not to twist an ankle in the uneven ruts. Every stone in your way is eager to introduce itself to your bare feet. You wonder for the 100th time what sandals might feel like. Then remember, the last time you wore a borrowed pair, they gave you a rash and 3 blisters. Barefoot it is. The smell of manure fades slightly, replaced by the sharper scent of river mud and warm papyrus reeds. Birds cackle overhead, and somewhere nearby, a bullfrog sounds like he's mocking you personally. Your stomach growls, which is funny because you've just eaten. But that's the thing about ancient Egyptian breakfasts. They fill your mouth, but not your day. Clothing, in theory, should provide comfort, dignity, and maybe even a bit of flair. But in ancient Egypt, especially when you're not among the linen-wrapped elite, it offers more irritation than inspiration. You're dressed technically. Your cousin handed you a tattered strip of linen, undeniably white once upon a time, now a sort of philosophical beige. It wraps around your waist and hangs awkwardly to your knees. It's stiff from repeated washings in gritty river water and smells faintly of fish. You loop a cord around your waist to keep it from unraveling mid-step. Ancient Egyptian fashion tip: if your wrap comes undone at work, just pretend it's a new ventilation technique. Upper garments optional in your case. It's already blisteringly hot, and adding layers is a punishment you wouldn't wish on your worst rival. Not that he wears a shirt either. Some wealthier folk might have light tunics, even pleated ones if they're feeling fancy. You've got a woven headcloth that offers about as much sun protection as a wet leaf. You tug at it anyway, hoping it stays put. The desert breeze picks up, lifting your wrap like it's considering revealing your secrets. You clutch the fabric down. Modesty matters, even if your neighbors have seen your entire family naked during bath time in the Nile. Women, if they're from your status, wear tight sheath dresses held up by straps. You've seen your cousin wriggling into hers like a snake molting. She always complains that the linen clings to the wrong places, especially once you start sweating. And you always start sweating. Historians still argue whether these clothes were always this revealing, or whether artistic depictions exaggerated for style. What's certain is that linen was the go-to fabric, and weaving it was a time-consuming ordeal. A single garment could take weeks to make. Not that this prevented everyone from immediately staining it with oil wine or baby vomit. You splash a little water on your chest in a futile attempt to stay cool. It dries instantly, leaving behind a dusty streak and a vague sense of betrayal. Your feet are as usual bare. Technically, there are sandals usually made from papyrus or palm fiber, but they wear out faster than you can walk to the temple and back. Plus, they trap sand between your toes, turning every step into a polite sandpaper massage. You sigh and adjust your headcloth again. It's sticking to your scalp, forming wrinkles in ways that somehow emphasize your sunburn. A neighbor passes by with an armload of firewood, wearing a wrap so short it could be mistaken for a belt. He nods. You nod. Neither of you speaks. There's a mutual understanding here. Don't talk unless you're offering shade. You spot the scribe's son, 9 years old, already dressed in fine linen with blue-tinted trim. He's got shoes. You consider tackling him for them. You don't, of course, but you think about it. One of the temple acolytes hurries past his white kilt, stiff with starch and perfectly pleated. He's also barefoot, but somehow even that seems cleaner, probably because he doesn't have to chase escaped goats through thorns. You glance up at the sun. It's now a full-blown furnace in the sky. Your linen has soaked through at the back, sticking to your spine like warm glue. The smell of sweat, your own and everyone else's, wafts like a communal offering to the gods. Some people carry perfumed cones on their heads, wax pyramids that slowly melt, releasing scent. You've always wanted to try one, but yours would probably attract bees instead of compliments. A child runs past with nothing on but an amulet necklace. You sigh with envy. Childhood is the only time in ancient Egypt when public nudity equals social acceptability. You tug your cloth tighter, adjust your posture, and prepare to face the next challenge. Your linen might be uncomfortable, your feet filthy, and your sweat constant, but at least you're properly dressed for a civilization that's been perfecting discomfort since 3000 BCE. The sun is no longer something you acknowledge with a sleepy squint. It is now a personal tormentor. A blazing god spotlight determined to sear every inch of exposed skin. Welcome to midday in ancient Egypt, where the air itself seems to hiss. You step onto the road, being a generous term for a dusty track packed hard by centuries of foot traffic and donkey droppings. The surface is already hot enough to fry onions, and your bare feet protest with every step. Each rock, each grain of sand carries the fury of Ra himself. You consider walking on your hands, then remember your job involves both of them. There's no shade unless you count the occasional overhanging mat roof or the flutter of a palm leaf in someone's front yard. You hug the wall of a house, inching along the slim strip of shadow like it's sacred ground. It vanishes quickly. The sun always wins. Your water jug, half full when you left the house, is now a warm disappointment. You take a sip. It's like drinking bath water someone's already cried in. Still, you need it. Dehydration's not poetic. It's just how half the village's elders return to the gods. Ahead, a herd of cattle ambles through the street, kicking up a dust storm. One bellows at you, as if offended by your face. You step aside and into a patch of thorny weeds. Your foot stabs onto something sharp. You yelp. A passing woman laughs. She's balancing a basket on her head like it's nothing, linen robes fluttering behind her like she's walking a fashion show, not a sandblasted alley. You limp forward, wincing. You've developed a gait that alternates between dodging dung and hopping from foot to foot like you're in a barefoot tango. It's exhausting, but you've made it halfway to the brick fields, and your limbs haven't melted. Yet. Historians still debate how Egyptians dealt with the midday heat. Some suggest longer workdays split by afternoon rest periods, while others argue that the relentless pace, especially for laborers, left little room for siestas. You suspect the truth lies somewhere between desperate endurance and a complete disregard for your well-being. By the time you reach the work site, your mouth tastes like you've been licking sandstone. Your back is damp, not with refreshing perspiration, but with the heavy, sticky sweat that makes your linen wrap cling like a damp snake. You pass the temple guards, standing at their post under a modest canopy. They're fanning themselves with palm leaves, their faces glistening but smug. You imagine swapping places just for the shade, but decide you'd rather endure this heat than take orders from a guy with a stick. Your friend waves from the edge of the field. He's already coated in a thin crust of clay dust. You wave back and feel the skin on your arm tighten. Sunburn again. One day, you'll invent sunscreen. For now, you consider mud. At the edge of the brick pit, you finally pause. A rare breeze slinks through the reeds, brushing your face like a tentative apology. You savor it for the 3 seconds it lasts. Then you step down into the pit. The heat doubles. No escape now. You look around at your fellow workers, dozens of sun-baked souls like yourself, each in various stages of fatigue, dustiness, and resignation. A few wear crude hats made from woven reeds. You make a mental note to steal one if anyone faints. Above, vultures circle lazily. You raise a hand in a mock greeting. They probably already know your name. Your job today is simple. In theory, make mud bricks. In practice, it's a full-body endurance test conducted in a clay sauna with flies for company. You step into the pit, a shallow basin filled with mud straw and the regret of 1,000 ancestors. The smell hits immediately. Sour earth fermenting straw, and something else you refuse to identify. Your feet sink into the mix with a wet squelch, and your toes curl as they discover hidden pebbles and squirming things. You try not to think about it. First step, stomping. You join 2 other workers, rhythmically churning the sludge into consistency with your legs. It's less dancing and more agricultural punishment. The mud splashes up your calves, drying in crusty layers that will flake off during dinner if you get that far. Once mixed, you kneel and begin scooping the heavy muck into rectangular wooden molds. Each mold has to be packed tightly, smoothed over, and then carefully flipped out onto the flat, drying field. If it crumbles, you start over. If it sticks, you curse in your head and smack the mold against the ground until it dislodges like a stubborn relative refusing to leave a party. This is what you'll do all day. Scoop, pack, flip, repeat. It takes a dozen bricks before your back starts to protest. 50 bricks before your hands blister. 100 before you stop caring about either. Historians still argue whether Egyptian laborers were enslaved or merely worked in oppressive conditions for survival. What they do agree on brickmaking was grueling, and the quotas were brutal. A single worker might be expected to mold hundreds per day, regardless of heat fatigue or emotional collapse. A foreman paces behind you, tapping a stick against his thigh. He doesn't say anything, just watches. You imagine this is his entire personality, the kind of man who enjoys measuring others' misery. You sneak a glance at your latest row of bricks. Mostly straight. Not bad. You exhale. One small victory. Your hands are raw, and the mud has worked its way under every fingernail, turning your fingers into tiny clay shovels. You wipe sweat from your brow with a muddy forearm, leaving a streak that's part war paint, part exfoliation disaster. A coworker hums a repetitive tune, probably an old folk rhythm passed down through generations. The sound soothes you a bit, anchoring your brain to something outside of the endless scoop-slap-mold cycle. You hum along off-key. Suddenly, your mold breaks. Not catastrophically, just a crack in the wood. You pause. Your foreman does not. He notices and tosses you a replacement. It's older, more splintered. You look at it and sigh. This is not an upgrade. As midday bleeds into early afternoon, the sun turns savage. The clay dries faster, yes, but so does your skin. Your lips crack, your joints ache. You haven't stood up in hours. When you do, your knees pop audibly. The sound echoes, like a papyrus scroll, tearing. Someone calls for a water break. It's not generous, just a ladleful from a shared jar. You take your turn, trying to ignore the sediment swirling at the bottom. It tastes like hope and pond. While you sip, you glance around. Beyond the pit, the Nile sparkles mockingly. You'd give anything to leap into it, to float on your back and let the current carry you far, far away. Maybe to a land where bricks build themselves and linen doesn't itch. But no, you're here. Making bricks with hands that feel less like yours and more like rented tools. Still you go back, mold in hand, knees bent. Another brick, another step closer to sunset. When the overseer finally allows a lunch break, you almost weep. Not because the food will be good, it won't, but because, for a brief, precious window, you're not molding bricks with fingers that feel like overcooked reeds. You shuffle to the shaded edge of the work site where a handful of workers have already collapsed in various poses of defeat. Someone mutters something about the goddess Isis, and you're not sure if it's a prayer or a complaint. You untie the cloth bundle from your belt. Inside, your gourmet midday feast, a few raw onions, a hunk of yesterday's bread, and a tiny slab of dried fish that smells like it died twice. You sigh and start chewing. The onions hit your tongue with a sharp sting strong enough to water your eyes. You chase them with a bite of bread crunchy with embedded grit and then tear at the fish. It's leathery salty and faintly metallic. You chew with determination, not pleasure. It's not about taste. It's about surviving the afternoon. A fly lands on your fish. You flick it off. Another lands on your face. You flick that one too. The flies are relentless, circling in hungry spirals like they're performing some ancient rite of annoyance. They seem particularly fond of your sweat. A few co-workers gather nearby. One tells a story about a jackal stealing a baby goat. Everyone laughs, probably from hunger-induced delirium. You join in. Why not? Laughter burns fewer calories than crying. Historians still argue whether Egyptian workers were paid in kind rations or in goods, like beer and grain. Most agree meals like yours were standard. Protein came from fish when available, and vegetables like onions and garlic were prized both as food and medicine. No one used them for flavor. They were the flavor. You eye someone else's meal. They have dates, actual dates. You consider a trade, but all you have left is one more bite of dried despair and a small withered fig you found in your tunic pocket. You keep it. Emergency morale ration. A breeze stirs the air, carrying a pungent mix of Nile mist, fermented sweat, and scorched reeds. You inhale. It's familiar. You wonder if someday this smell will make someone nostalgic. You hope not, A cat prowls by, tail high, eyes narrowed. It stops and sniffs your lunch, then walks away with an air of judgment. Even the sacred animals are food critics. You lie back for a moment using your satchel as a pillow. The dirt is warm, but solid grounding. You stare at the sky. Endless blue, no clouds, no mercy. Somewhere, priests are fanning themselves in marble courtyards. You imagine switching places. Then you remember, temple duties involve blood entrails and daily rituals to re-mummify statues. You keep your dirt pillow, your eyelids droop. Someone snores nearby. You let yourself drift for a second, listening to the soft drone of insects and the distant cry of an ibis. A shout snaps you awake. Breaks over. The overseer's back, stick in hand. He doesn't strike. It's just a prop, but the implication is clear. You groan, stretch, and rise. Your fingers are still sticky from the fish. You wipe them on your wrap, which already holds enough stains to qualify as a historical artifact. Another gulp of warm water, another sigh, and back to the pit. You go. Lunch didn't fill you. It rarely does, but for a moment, you had salt sun and silence. And in ancient Egypt, that counts as luxury. You're knee-deep in clay again when the trouble starts. It's not your fault. All you did was sneeze. The problem. You happen to sneeze within 20 cubits of a roadside shrine dedicated to Tauret, the hippo-faced goddess of childbirth and protection. Superstitions being what they are, someone gasps, someone else mutters, and now the foreman's looking at you like you've personally invited a drought. You wipe your nose on your forearm. It's just dust, you mutter. But the brickmaker beside you takes a step back. He's not angry, just cautious, the way you'd treat someone holding a basket of scorpions and sneezing near a granary. In ancient Egypt, gods weren't distant figures looming in the sky. They were everywhere, lurking in statues, amulets, temple shadows, and yes, even mudbrick fields. Daily life was infused with divine expectations. Forget to honor Bess, and your baby might be born with crooked feet. Offend Sobek, and that calm stretch of Nile could sprout crocodiles. Historians still debate whether people genuinely believed in all 1,500 or so gods, or whether it was just social conditioning and tradition. Either way, when your sneeze offends a deity, you don't argue. You apologize. You glance toward the shrine, a modest stone cubicle with a painted hippo face. Someone's left flowers. Someone else has scrawled a crude picture of a crocodile with tears. You bow quickly and murmur a half-formed prayer. A priestess walks past at that exact moment. She narrows her eyes. She's young, but dressed in pristine white linen, her hair elaborately braided and adorned with what might be lotus petals or just papyrus pretending to be. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't have to. Her silence is weightier than your entire lunch. Later, you find out she filed a report. Not with the gods directly, but with a temple scribe who will record that the worker known as Sandface disturbed the presence of Tauret with unauthorized sneezing. You'll be fined. Probably grain. You were saving that. The village scribe might even deliver a mild rebuke in public. He enjoys those. He sits in the shade all day writing complaints, cataloging taxes, and smiling faintly like he's above the rest of you. His only callus is from the stylus. To make amends, your aunt insists on brewing a protection tea. It smells like fermented garlic and tastes like someone filtered despair through a sandal. You drink it anyway. The alternative is spirit possession, and you really can't afford another day off. Your cousin gives you an amulet carved from faience. It's shaped like a tiny frog. She says it represents Heket, goddess of fertility and good health. You're not trying to get pregnant, but protection is protection. You tie it around your neck with a shoelace made from old palm fiber. By the end of the day, you're double pouching your prayer beads and bowing every time you pass a shrine tree or bird that might be sacred. A passing ibis startles you, and you whisper blessings upon your wings, just in case it's Thoth in disguise. This is life in ancient Egypt. The gods aren't distant. They're nosy, omnipresent, and occasionally grumpy. And all it takes is one sneeze to become spiritually radioactive. As the sun sinks low and the temperature begins its slow, reluctant drop, you look skyward and offer a silent apology to all celestial parties involved. Then you sneeze again. You look around quickly. No one notices. You exhale. The gods have spared you. For now. The sun's finally easing off. But that doesn't mean the day is done. Far from it. You limp home, every muscle aching, each step squelching, with half-dried clay between your toes. You've got mud in places you didn't know existed. You reach your house, if you can call a one-room oven of mudbrick a house. It's not insulated, it's not ventilated, it's just hot. The walls hold heat like a grudge, and walking inside feels like being hugged by a very sweaty ghost. The first thing that hits you is the smell. Your cousin's been frying onions again. With what oil, you don't ask. It smells good, but it's also fighting a losing battle against the underlying scent of goat smoke and your uncle's sandals. The whole family's crammed inside. 3 cousins, 2 aunts, your mother, a goat, and possibly a ghost. You're not sure. Someone's whispering in a corner, and no one seems to be listening. You take your place on the woven mat. It's your bed. Technically, it's communal, sitting, sleeping, eating real estate. You get a square foot or two, and that's generous. You stretch out legs tangled with someone else's. No one complains. Privacy's not a thing here. Historians still argue whether domestic life in ancient Egypt was cozy or chaotic. Art depicts serene households' wives serving fruit kids playing harps. But reality was louder, sweatier, and usually involved stepping on a chicken in the dark. You try to clean yourself, sort of. There's a bucket of lukewarm water in the corner. You splash your arms, rub the worst clay patches, and sniff yourself. Better, but only if the benchmark is slightly less pungent. Your uncle comes home last. He's a fisherman, or a fish smeller, depending on the catch. Today he brings 2 small tilapia. Everyone cheers faintly. Dinner just leveled up. He guts them on a stone slab in the middle of the room, tossing the guts to the goat. The goat's thrilled. You pretend not to watch as the fish are tossed on a grill made from clay bricks and held together by divine will. Dinner is served. 1 bite each, maybe 2 if you're fast. You get a sliver of fish, a half-burnt piece of bread, and a few more onions. It's the same as lunch, just warmer. You chew slowly, savoring the protein, ignoring the crunchy sand bits. Conversation drifts lazily. Someone mentions a neighbor's new amulet. Someone else jokes about a priest who fell into the Nile. Your aunt talks about her dream again involving hippos. You wonder if the gods are trying to tell her something. A distant jackal howls. It's far, but not far enough. You glance at the door, a piece of wood with a rock in front of it. It's locked. You hope it holds. You lie back, arms behind your head. The roof above you is made of palm stalks. Dust filters through gently, like it's snowing indoors. You close your eyes and let the ceiling coat you. The goat lies down next to you. It's warm. You don't object. This is home. It's cramped. It's noisy. It's a sauna with walls, but it's yours. You inhale deeply. Onions, fish smoke, sweat dust, and goat. You've smelled worse, just not often. Bath time in ancient Egypt isn't so much a routine as it is a gritty compromise. There's no tub, no scented soap, no relaxing candlelight. There's a bucket, some sand, and if you're feeling fancy, a smear of natron, nature's least comforting exfoliant. You head to the side yard if your house has one, or else just step behind a crumbling wall. Privacy is a myth, but decency demands at least the illusion of it. You strip down quickly, the evening air, barely cooler than the day's furnace. A clay bowl holds a mix of river water and ground natron sodium carbonate with delusions of grandeur. You scoop some with your hands and start scrubbing. It burns. That's how you know it's working. Natron, you're told, purifies. Priests use it on mummies. You use it on armpits. The texture is like sandpaper dipped in brine. You grind it into your skin, flinching each time it finds a blister or cut of which you have many. It leaves you raw, tingling, and somehow still dusty. There's no towel. You air dry. Mosquitoes take this as an invitation. One lands on your thigh. You slap it, then another. The buzzing is a lullaby if your lullabies were composed by petty demons. You glance at your neighbor, who's also washing up. He's humming, eyes closed, using a broken comb to tease grit from his scalp. His child dumps a full pot of water over his head without warning. He yelps. You both laugh. Historians still debate the frequency of personal hygiene in ancient Egypt. Art suggests that cleanliness was prized, yet tools were primitive. Razor-sharp flint for shaving, ash for scrubbing, river water for everything else, cleaning, bathing, and occasionally rituals that involve cow urine. You hope you're not due for one of those. Tonight's cleansing ends with a dab of perfumed oil, if you have it. You don't. So you reach for the poor man's cologne, a burnt incense cone smeared under your arms. It masks sweat with the scent of spiced smoke and desperation. Your cousin has a lice problem again. She's treating it with a poultice made from crushed garlic and sour beer. The smell could resurrect a mummy. She waves at you, eyes red from the fumes. You wave back from a distance. Inside, your mother is trimming her nails with a bronze blade, carefully, slowly, like she's prepping for battle. You respect the precision. Your cousin's baby is having a screaming fit, which your aunt treats by chanting to Hathor while shaking a gourd rattle. It works. Maybe. The baby stops crying or gets bored. You scratch your arm and flakes of dried natron fall like snow. It stings. You sniff. Still better than earlier. This is cleanliness, ancient Egyptian style part. Pain, part ritual, part luck. You feel cleaner though. Not clean, but less filthy. Your skin glows slightly, mostly from irritation. As the sun slips fully beneath the horizon and the first stars blink awake, you sit outside and fan yourself with a reed mat. The heat clings like a clingy relative, but there's a breeze now. You close your eyes, let it pass over your stinging skin, and pretend it's doing more than just rearranging the humidity. A dog barks somewhere far off. A neighbor laughs. The village settles into its nighttime hum. You've survived another round of ancient hygiene. Tomorrow, you'll sweat it all off again. But for now, you're minty fresh by 1300 BCE standards. You didn't ask to get sick. Nobody ever does. But the Nile gave you something, probably a parasite, maybe just spite. And now your head throbs, your stomach churns, and your joints feel like they're auditioning for a role in a tomb mural titled Agony in Papyrus Form. So, what do you do when you're sick? In ancient Egypt, first you lie down and moan dramatically. This is both therapeutic and expected. Your family takes note, but no one moves. They've seen this before. Your aunt finally sighs, gets up, and shuffles toward the household shrine. Out comes the mouse. Not a metaphor. A literal, shriveled mouse tied to a string and soaked in oil. It's been blessed, allegedly. You don't ask what kind of blessing involves taxidermy. She ties it to your wrist and mutters a prayer to Sekhmet, goddess of plagues and healing. You sincerely hope she's listening. Sekhmet is famously temperamental. Her mood swings are the stuff of temple horror stories. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian medicine was effective or just elaborate theater. They had Dr. Sunu, who used surprisingly advanced techniques, setting bones, stitching wounds, even performing minor surgeries. But the remedies often a mix of science guesswork and curses whispered under incense smoke. Next up, herbal concoctions. Your mother produces a bowl filled with what smells like fermented leeks and looks like regret. You sip. It's thick, warm. It tastes like someone boiled a shoe with intentions of revenge. You gag. She smiles encouragingly. Then comes the ritual. A priest, or in this case your neighbor, who once touched a priest, chants a protective verse from the Ebers Papyrus, a long scroll filled with medical spells and diagnoses, like if his heart speaks in his stomach, then the gods are confused. Comforting. The ritual involves waving a reed fan in sacred patterns. He gets winded by pattern 2. You thank him anyway. You lie back the mouse swinging slightly from your wrist and try to focus on the ceiling. Your cousin offers a hot stone to press against your belly. It helps, maybe. Or maybe it's just hot. You remember hearing that priests shave all their body hair to keep clean during healing rituals. You glance at your neighbor's hairy arms and decide he's probably operating without a license. Someone brings in honey. Finally, something useful. Honey is known to help with wounds, sore throats, and morale. You lick a dab off your finger. Bliss. Then it's gone. A cat jumps onto your chest. It stares at you like a diagnostic tool. You ask it, "Will I live?" It blinks once. Maybe. As the night deepens, your fever does too. You start to hallucinate. The mouse on your wrist looks smug. The palm rafters above twist into hieroglyphs that laugh at your mortality. You dream of swimming in the Nile, only this time, the water's cool and no one's dumping chamber pots upstream. You smile in your sleep. In the morning, you'll either feel better or feel worse. But tonight, you're wrapped in a blanket, blessed by rodents, and covered in leek broth. Medicine has never been so questionable or so sincerely applied. You're feeling marginally better. The fever's receded like the Nile in drought season, though your stomach still gurgles in protest. And just when you think your body couldn't take more surprises along comes romance ancient Egyptian style. Love in this era isn't all lotus flowers and love poems carved into limestone. Though to be fair, there are love poems. They're lovely, often comparing the beloved to a goose or a field of ripe barley. Poetic and slightly agricultural. Your heart, however, is set on the girl from the basket weaver's lane, Ma'atka. She's smart funny, and crucially, doesn't laugh when you trip in fish guts. That's rare. Today you see her at the market. She's haggling over onions, eyes narrowed, voice sharp. It's terrifying. It's adorable. You approach clutching the only token of affection you could find, a slightly wilted cabbage. She raises an eyebrow. You mumble something about shared dinners and not dying alone. She smirks, takes the cabbage, and walks away. Victory? You're not sure. But she didn't throw it at you. That counts. Historians still argue about how much choice ancient Egyptians had in matters of the heart. While many marriages were arranged, especially among the wealthy common folk, often chose partners based on affection, or at least mutual tolerance. Love spells and fertility charms were popular, suggesting emotional stakes ran deep. You've heard that romantic gifts range from cosmetics to fish. You had a fish once. It's spoiled. Now, you stick with vegetables. Later, Ma'atka passes by your house. She drops something on the doorstep, a small linen bundle with a dried lotus flower inside. You pick it up like it's treasure. It kind of is. Inside the house, your mother eyes you suspiciously. She asks no questions, but she lights a small oil lamp with the flame of nosy approval. By the next festival, Ma'atka and her family are sitting beside yours at the communal table. It's loud. Kids run around. Someone spills beer. The goat tries to eat a garland. But through it all, you sit beside her, sharing a slightly stale date cake, and it feels like the whole world has softened just a bit. There's no official proposal, no rings, just a quiet nod, a shared chore, and the understanding that you'll probably end up co-parenting 4 kids and a goat. You carve a small charm from bone, clumsily, because you're not a scribe, and tie it to a string. It's a heart, sort of. You give it to her the next morning. She laughs, says it looks like a bean, and wears it anyway. Romance in ancient Egypt doesn't come with fireworks or orchestras. It comes with shared bread laughter over sweaty chores and the promise not to let the other get eaten by jackals. Love, it seems, endures even when everything else smells faintly of onions and fish. Romance may warm the heart, but bureaucracy chills the soul, especially in ancient Egypt, where the true pharaoh isn't a man in gold, but the man with a ledger and a reed pen. You're summoned at dawn by a temple scribe, not for anything good. It's tax season. Taxes here don't mean coins, they mean grain. Barley wheat emmer, measured, recorded, and extracted with cheerful tyranny. You show up with a basket of what you think is enough. The scribe eyes it, tilts his head, and calls over a clerk. They pour your grain onto a scale, a 2-pan contraption with stones that haven't been honest since the reign of Pepi I. It tilts dramatically. The clerk frowns theatrically. Short, he says, like he's disappointed in you personally. You stare at the scale. The weight stone is damp. Damp stones weigh more. You say this. The clerk pretends he doesn't hear. You cough and repeat it louder. He shrugs. The gods see all he says. You consider pointing out that the gods also see wet fraud. You don't. Historians still argue whether the average peasant was overtaxed or just part of a complex redistribution system. The answer likely depends on which end of the reed pen you held. The scribe, meanwhile, is writing. Slowly, deliberately. Each character feels like a personal attack. He finally hands you a receipt, 2 palm slivers bound with cord. One for you, one for official records. He says this with the solemnity of a high priest. You try not to cry. Then comes the grain audit. A bureaucrat walks with you to your storage pit, pokes around with a stick, and frowns at the number of rats. You apologize for their abundance. He nods like this is a moral failure on your part. He tells you to dig up 1/3 of what's left. In case of royal need, he says. You wonder how often the pharaoh eats old barley. Back at the temple, another official interrogates you about last week's flax quota. You explain your goat ate half of it. He doesn't laugh. Goats, he says, do not absolve tax debt. You suggest taxing the goat. He glares. You retract. Later that day, a boy arrives with a scroll detailing your new corvée assignment, 3 days of ditch clearing. For irrigation, in summer, with reeds taller than you and frogs that bite. You nod, accept it, and wonder if there's a deity in charge of escaping paperwork. Probably not. Or maybe he's in exile. That night, as you scribble a tally of your remaining barley and charcoal on your wall, because you no longer trust anyone else to do it, you realize your life is ruled not by fate or love or gods, but by men with lists. You bow to no one but you, bend slightly for the man with the ink pot. As night descends over the village, the shadows stretch long and lean, and the real threat of the ancient world slinks from the corners. You'd think after a day of sunburn, sneezes, taxes, and barely edible onions, you'd get to relax. But no, the nighttime in Egypt is a second shift of paranoia. You push a large reed mat across the doorway. It's your door. Behind it, you place a stone heavy enough to slow a jackal light enough to move if someone screams. Outside, dogs bark, and then suddenly stop. That's never a good sign. The air cools, but not kindly. It turns crisp, biting into your sun-scorched skin. The kind of breeze that sneaks up your linen wrap and makes you question the integrity of all fabric. You huddle with your family, who have all arranged themselves into the nighttime pile. Your aunt lies with her feet pressed into your back. The goat's snoring. Someone smells like old fish. It's warm, though. There's comfort in proximity. You listen. You always listen. In the distance, someone shouts. Then silence. Probably a drunk. Maybe a thief. Possibly a spirit. You don't investigate. That's how you become the spirit in someone else's bedtime story. Historians still argue whether night raids and grave robbers were as rampant as Egyptian folklore suggests. Temples certainly believed so. They built traps, curses, and fake tombs to deter them. And villagers, they just made sure their doors were heavy and their offerings to Anubis were regular. Your neighbor once claimed he saw a demon. Turned out it was a monkey with a stolen wig. Still, he moved his bed to the roof for a week. You clutch your frog amulet. It's technically for fertility, but tonight, it's your all-purpose divine protection charm. You whisper a prayer to Bess, the dwarf god who wards off evil spirits, childbirth complications, and bad dreams. You figure you cover all three with that one. The fire has burned low. Embers glow faintly, casting red light onto the walls. You think about what might be lurking out there. Jackals, sniffing for open baskets. Spirits looking for warmth or worse. Temple tax collectors working overtime. The silence deepens. Then something rustles near the wall. You freeze. It could be wind. It could be your cousin. It could be fate sharpening its claws. You whisper loudly, "Did you hear that?" Your cousin responds, "Shut up." You feel safer. Somehow. Outside, the Nile glistens under the moon, calm and silver. You imagine it's peaceful there until you remember the crocodiles. Somewhere one of them floats, watching, ancient and patient. You try not to think about the grave robbers who sometimes target not tombs but homes. People disappear. People return, different. You pull the mat tighter over the doorway. A neighbor's dog begins barking again. Then silence. You breathe shallowly, listening. Then finally, the village exhales. The kind of hush that means either everything is safe or everything is watching. You close your eyes and whisper one more prayer. Let the night pass gently. Let the door hold. Let the goat stay asleep. You lie in the dark, or what passes for dark, in a one-room house with a glowing ember and snoring relatives. The mat under you is prickly. The mat over you smells like everyone who's ever used it. You shift slightly. Dust falls from the ceiling and lands on your face. Welcome to bedtime in ancient Egypt. You try to get comfortable, but comfort is relative when you're sharing a mat with 3 people and 1 animal. Someone's elbow is in your ribs. Someone else's toes are alarmingly cold. The goat sighs like it's been through a harder day than you. Your ears adjust to the night's sounds. The buzz of mosquitoes. The distant croak of frogs. The occasional splat of something dripping from the rafters water if you're lucky. Gecko droppings if you're not. You cover your face with a corner of your linen wrap to keep the bugs out. It doesn't help. One mosquito gets in. Anyway, buzzes directly into your ear. Then vanishes, just as you swat. You know it'll be back. They always come back. You wonder if there's a god in charge of sleep. There is Saker, a god of the underworld, sometimes associated with quiet and stillness. You mutter his name like a plea. Nothing happens. The mosquito returns. Historians still debate how ancient Egyptians dealt with insomnia. With daily physical labor, one would assume they collapsed into deep sleep. But even back then, insomnia was a known curse. Some spells in the medical papyri address restless heart or waking spirit. The solutions, potions, charms, and probably resignation. Someone next to you starts sleep-talking something about bread quotas and a duck. You ignore it. You've had that dream too. You roll over. Your hip lands on a rock. You roll back. Your head thuds against a pottery shard. You sit up, reposition. Everything lie down again. Progress. Then the ceiling creaks. You look up. A beetle the size of your thumb is slowly making its way across a reed beam. It pauses, as if considering whether to fall directly onto your face. You stare at it. It stares back. A truce is formed. Just as you begin to drift off, the goat shifts, kicks, and knocks over a water jar. The splash jolts you awake. Your cousin groans. The floor is now damp. You exhale through your nose, close your eyes and let your body melt into the mat. The buzz fades. The heat lifts just enough. The sounds outside blur together into a white noise of frogs and night wind and maybe a distant hymn from a temple. You're almost there. You let go. The goat snores. Someone farts softly. You sleep. As your breathing slows, the sensations of the day dissolve. Grain dust in your hair, the crackle of firelight, the distant beat of drums echoing from a far-off temple. The Nile slips silently through the night, just beyond the edge of dreams, its waters gleaming under the pale glow of the moon. The village stills. The last whispers of chatter fade. In the darkness, even the gods seem to rest. Your body heavy with labor, and heat sinks deeper into the straw mat. The clay walls around you no longer feel confining. They're a cocoon, warm and silent. The ceiling breathes. The goat mumbles in its sleep. Every ache and scrape from the day dulls under the hush of starlight. Every worry, from grain quotas to overzealous priests, waits outside the door, respectful of sleep's dominion. Your mind floats gently adrift in a sea of stillness. The rhythms of ancient life, so constant, so demanding pause for a few sweet hours. The world won't change overnight. But for now, you are safe grounded in a timeless hush that's known to all who've labored and dreamed beneath the same desert stars. Let the breeze kiss your skin. Let the hum of insects lull you. Let the weight of sleep wrap around you like linen, soft and silent. Nothing is urgent. Nothing is missing. The gods are quiet. The night is long. Sleep now. The day is done. Your hands are raw, your back a map of aches, and your mind, well, it's drifting. As you lie on the woven mat, surrounded by snores, goats, and dreams half remembered, you wonder what life might be like beyond the mud brick alleys and brick pits. What if you weren't a laborer, but a servant inside one of those grand houses in Thebes' polished floors? Perfumed air, linen that actually matches. Of course, you'd still wake before dawn. You'd still sweat. And instead of bricks, you'd be juggling incense gossip and one very dramatic noblewoman. So as the Nile hums its lullaby and the stars begin their slow crawl across the sky, let's slip sideways into another corner of Egypt, a quieter one, almost. Welcome to the house of Lady Anketi. You're now her chambermaid. Good luck. You wake up to the scratchy squeal of a reed shutter swinging open in the pre-dawn breeze. The world is still dark, though the sky glows faintly violet near the horizon. You've already kicked off your reed mat before the rooster 3 houses down lets out its first pathetic croak. There's a bucket in your hand before you're even fully awake. The Theban morning is chilly, which means only 28 degrees Celsius instead of 38. You shuffle out into the courtyard, avoiding yesterday's chicken bones and that one cracked roof tile that always wobbles underfoot. Your linen dress is stiff with salt from yesterday's sweat, and the water jar digs into your collarbone as you head toward the communal well. The other servants are out too, some yawning, some humming to themselves as they walk barefoot through sand that still holds a whisper of last night's cool. One of them gives you a half smile. You think her name is Tahuti's sister, or maybe goat wife. You've never actually asked. The social politics of chambermaids are a labyrinth best avoided until after breakfast. At the well, You nod to a priest's apprentice who's sketching something in the dust with a stick, probably another love spell. He looks up, mumbles a blessing to Hathor, and you grunt in return. The bucket creaks, the rope groans, and the water sloshes like distant thunder as you haul it up. The first of many today. Historians still argue whether lower-class Egyptian women had access to formal religious rites or merely mimicked elite rituals. You hedge your bets, murmuring a quick thank you to Taweret, goddess of household protection, before hoisting the water to your shoulder. Back at the estate, the household is beginning to stir. You hear the snort of a donkey in the stable, the dry cough of the steward who claims he once translated Akkadian. A cat possibly divine, possibly just rude, slips past your ankles without a glance. You enter the main house through the servant's door, careful not to clank the jar too loudly. The stone floor is still cool under your feet. You light a wick, dipped in castor oil, and move silently past alabaster statues, their eyes fixed forward, judging your bedhead. Your first task is the mistress's bath. Not that she'll take one, but she likes to know it's ready in case she decides to sprinkle herself with rose water later and declare herself cleansed. You pour water into the clay basin, measure out natron, and rub your hands raw on the sandstone to scrub out yesterday's soap scum. It's like offering fresh figs to a statue. You know it's symbolic more than practical. There's a moment of silence as you catch your breath. Then the unmistakable sound of footsteps above. She's awake, or at least pacing. You have minutes before she descends like a perfume-drenched tornado, demanding to know why there are only 2 types of dates in her fruit tray. You hustle to the linen chest, selecting a dress that's wrinkle-free within this season's palette, lapis and saffron, and doesn't smell like last week's incense. You find it. You thank Neith. You run. Upstairs, you pause before the beaded curtain to compose yourself. Chin up, shoulders back, neutral expression. You could be a statue yourself. Except statues don't sweat this much. And you enter her chamber. The chamber smells like a mixture of frankincense honey cakes and mild contempt. Your mistress, Lady Anketi, daughter of a once important scribe and current enthusiast of all things dramatic, is reclined on a low couch, draped in last night's linen and several layers of disapproval. Finally, she exhales without looking at you. I've been listening to that dreadful ibis squawk for 20 minutes. You mutter something about the well being busy, though you both know that's only half true. The other half involved balancing a water jar with one hand while swatting away flies with a torn palm fan. You lay out the fresh garment across her cedar bench, smoothing every fold. It's a crisp, lapis blue sheath embroidered with tiny lotus blooms, a pattern she swore she hated last week, but now insists is very in, according to Annan's wife. You nod, as if the opinions of Annan's wife matter more than what's for breakfast. Next, the cosmetic box, a delicate chest of ivory inlays, filled with pots of crushed malachite red ochre, and a black coal, so potent it once made a cat sneeze. You kneel, unscrewing the lids in silence, as she inspects her reflection in a copper mirror, polished to a glow, though still distorted enough to inflate her forehead slightly. She doesn't seem to mind. You begin applying the eyeliner, a process you've perfected, despite your mistress's tendency to blink at inopportune moments. The stick of galena hovers near her eye when she flinches suddenly. Not that thick, she snaps. I'm not mourning anyone. Yet. Of course you say, pretending not to remember her weeping over a spilled wine jar just last week. The lines adjust. Her face relaxes. Disaster narrowly avoided. Historians still argue whether elite Egyptian women managed their own cosmetics or relied entirely on servants. Based on your experience, the latter, though, relied might be too generous a word for the daily act of hostage negotiation this ritual requires. She finally stands, wraps herself in the blue linen, and stretches with the satisfaction of a cat that hasn't bathed in 3 days. Bring the incense, the one that doesn't make my nose itch. There are 3 types of incense in your tray. One definitely makes her nose itch, but you can never remember which. You close your eyes, take a guess, and light the cone. She sniffs, frowns, then says nothing. Victory. As she sweeps out of the room to torment the cook about pomegranate seeds, you exhale. Time to clean. Again, you start with the statues, 6 of them, each a different deity, each with its own rules. You begin with Bes, the squat god of music and childbirth, who always gets the corner cloth dabbed in beer. Then there's Maat, whose ostrich feather must never be touched with your left hand. You're not sure if these taboos are official or invented by Enketi's grandmother, but you follow them just in case. You polish each with careful strokes, whispering a silent apology when you accidentally sneeze on Thoth. He's probably used to it. The floor is next rushed, yet rhythmic, a wet reed brush, followed by a dry cloth, and then a quick spritz of rose water to mask the damp smell. The fragrance will last about 9 minutes, if you're lucky. Downstairs, the scribe's assistant is already complaining about something, probably the state of the scroll room, or the fact that someone moved his favorite stool. You make a mental note to ignore him. You've got more pressing issues. Someone spilled honey again in the guest antechamber. The ants are throwing a banquet. As you scrub the sticky tiles, you hear laughter maids teasing each other. Someone singing a hymn badly off key. You almost smile. Almost. Then you catch a glimpse of your own reflection in a polished jug. Hair frizzy. One sandal strap loose. Coal smudge on your cheek. You sigh. No wonder the statue of Isis never blinks at you approvingly. Just another morning in the service of someone who thinks sorcery means yelling at you until her bracelet unknots itself. Your day's only just begun, and already your arms ache from lifting jars, and your ears ring from the cook's shouting match with the grain supplier. It's time to ready your sacred tools, not the staff of a high priestess or a warrior's blade, but the real gear of survival in Thebes, your chambermaid's kit. You slip into the storage alcove behind the linen closet, ducking to avoid a dangling cobweb, with ambitions of becoming an ancestral spirit. Inside, shelves bow. Under the weight of daily necessities, oil flasks, barley loaves, and the dreaded lint combs. You take inventory like a seasoned field general. First the natron powder, fine as desert dust, and twice as irritating if you forget to wear your nose cloth. It's your weapon against sweat stains, body odor, and mysteriously sticky floors. The Egyptians may not have had soap as we know it, but they did swear by natron. You scoop some into a small pot, careful not to spill. Last time you did your sandals made suspicious puffs for days. Next comes your prized lint puller, carved from old tamarisk wood, and as effective as any royal edict. Anketi demands her linen be flawless. One stray thread, and she'll clutch her chest like she's been struck by Horus himself. You check your vial of sweet myrrh oil, which has been thinned with water twice already. Still fragrant, still plausible. You touch the cork to your wrist, no rash. Safe for skin then. And finally, tucked in a tiny pouch, stitched into your belt sash, is your secret weapon. A homemade perfume blend of cedarwood blue lotus and just a hint of mint. It's technically stolen from old temple recipes, but you like to think of it as repurposed. Anketi swears it's the scent of royal favor. You don't correct her. Historians still debate the exact proportions used in ancient Egyptian perfumes. Some argue it varied by region, others that formulas were fiercely guarded by families of scent makers. You, on the other hand, just mix until it smells like something that might distract your mistress from asking why the cushions look tired. You pocket a small cloth square embroidered with an eye of Horus. Not because you believe in its power necessarily, but because last time you left it behind, a mouse chewed through your lunch and your sandals snapped in the same hour. You don't mess with patterns. Stepping back into the corridor, you almost collide with a young servant boy, balancing a fruit tray stacked high with figs, pomegranates, and something suspiciously fuzzy. He wobbles. You catch the edge. No disaster today. He whispers a quick blessings upon you and scurries away. With tools in hand, you begin your rounds. First smoothing the bedding fine linen embroidered with ankhs and scarabs. Then dusting the carved window slats that always accumulate dead gnats by mid-morning. It's a routine, but there's comfort in its rhythm, a soft certainty in each stroke. The household bustles around you. Someone breaks a dish. Anketi's cousin arrives unannounced and declares the melon slices unseasonal. The steward sighs dramatically from the scroll chamber. Normal chaos. You pass through the atrium where a new statue is being installed. A lesser god of perfume whose name you can't pronounce. Two workers argue over which way he should face. One claims east for blessings, the other west for cool breezes. You suggest north, so his nose avoids the cook's incense. They laugh. You smile briefly. You pause near the courtyard pool, watching the water ripple as the breeze kisses its surface. In that moment, with your hands smelling faintly of cedar and your apron only half covered in dust, life almost feels calm. Sacred, even. Then Anketi calls for her foot salve, and you sprint back to reality lint comb, jabbing your ribs, secret perfume vial clinking softly like a reminder. Elegance is a product of effort. And you, dear chambermaid, are the quiet architect of every illusion. Lady Anketi is perched on her cushioned bench like a cat about to swat something. Or someone. You likely. She's surrounded by silks and a cluster of fruit rinds, her bare feet extended as she inspects one toenail, with the scrutiny of a stonemason judging a temple carving. You kneel, uncap the foot salve, and brace for commentary. I had a dream, she announces, not looking at you, about red birds and too many staircases. Should I worry? You consider the polite responses. Dreams are sacred. I'll ask a priest. Or perhaps avoid figs today. Instead, you settle on a non-committal hum and begin massaging her heels with the calendula and lotus blend. Tahuti's sister says dreams like that mean a visitor will arrive, she continues. Unwanted, male. You nod. A male visitor might mean more laundry, more complaints, and more trays of stale beer bread. You silently hope the redbirds meant something less inconvenient, like a minor crop failure. Enketti twitches. Not so hard. I'm not a warhorse. You ease the pressure, though. Part of you believes her heels might actually be harder than basalt. This, more than anything, defines your role, not the physical labor, not the endless tasks, but the delicate art of mood navigation. One wrong word, one too long pause, and you'll find yourself reassigned to latrine duty by lunchtime. Historians still argue whether elite Egyptian women held more power within the home or were largely ornamental. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Your mistress may not own land, but she can certainly ruin your week with a single eyebrow twitch. After the foot salve, you help her choose earrings. This is a 20-minute ordeal disguised as a simple task. There are faience hoops, gold spirals, lapis studs shaped like beetles. Enketti dismisses each with increasing disdain. The beetles make my ears look fat. You've never seen fat ears, but you don't argue. You suggest the spirals. She snorts, then picks them anyway. Classic. The morning continues in fits and starts. Enketti changes her mind about attending the midday sun blessing at least 3 times. Each reversal triggers new wardrobe decisions. She finally settles on her casual shrine visiting look. A flowing indigo tunic and a necklace of glazed carnelian beads that make her sneeze slightly. You hand her a scented cloth to dab her nose. She takes it like a queen receiving tribute. And then the real trouble starts. There's a crash from the rear corridor, something ceramic, something large. Enketti leaps to her feet, slinging a bracelet across the room. What was that? You don't know yet, but you're already walking toward it. As you round the corner, you spot the culprit. One of the house girls panicked, holding a cracked amphora, now dripping sour beer onto the mosaic floor. You sigh. You recognize the girl. Mehenet, barely 13, always nervous. You help her set the remnants down, mop up the spill, and whisper, "Tell the steward it cracked in storage. He owes us for that broken shelf anyway." She nods grateful and disappears down the hall. Back in the chamber, Enketti pretends she wasn't listening, though you know she was. She eyes you thoughtfully. "You're good at fixing things," she says, like it's a discovery. "I suppose that's useful." High praise. You bow slightly. The rest of the morning trickles by in patches of sunlight and sandal adjustments. Enketti chats about temple gossip, some scandal involving a singer and a sacred goose, and sips watered wine from a clay cup etched with a lion chasing its tail. You brush her hair, 100 strokes, always 100. Then she declares she's bored of serenity and flounces out to interrogate the cook about spice imports. You're left with silence, a half-empty perfume tray, and a growing sense that despite all appearances, this house is a cauldron waiting to bubble over. As the sun climbs higher, the temperature in the servant quarters rises from unpleasant to mildly infernal. You pause briefly in the shade of a sycamore tree, dabbing your forehead with the edge of your sash. There's a moment of quiet, just the rustle of palm leaves and the rhythmic squelch of someone nearby beating laundry on stone. Then it starts. Who moved my sandals? The courtyard explodes into chaos as Reket, one of the house's older maids, storms into view, holding a single sandal like it's been dipped in plague. "I left them right here, and now the left one's missing." A younger girl with a crooked braid dares to reply. Maybe the cat took it again. Reket gasps. That animal wouldn't dare. But you've seen the cat in question carry off dried fish clay beads and once a small loaf of bread. A sandal is well within her capabilities. Within minutes, a full-blown search party is formed. Cushions or overturned baskets rifled through accusations thrown like rotten figs. You try to steer clear, but then the cook emerges, cheeks flushed, and apron askew, waving a bundle of damp laundry. I'm missing 2 tunics, and someone used my good soap word. Now it's a proper servant standoff. You, being neither loud nor in possession of missing tunics, become the default mediator. Soapwort theft is a serious charge. Those suds don't grow on trees despite technically growing on bushes. You point out that the soapwort basin has been moved closer to the stable, probably to keep the smell of donkey from overpowering the laundry. Reket is unconvinced. That doesn't explain the sandal. You glance around. Then, from the corner of your eye, you spot it sticking out from under a bench, chewed slightly, but otherwise intact. You retrieve it with a flourish. Our sandal thief has been found. The household breathes a collective sigh. Someone claps. Reket narrows her eyes and mutters something about tracking spells. Historians still argue whether servants in large Egyptian estates developed informal hierarchies or if all roles were strictly assigned by overseers. Judging by this scene, it's clear informal hierarchies, and you've just earned a few extra rungs upward. You retreat toward the rear veranda, where laundry flaps gently in the breeze, to reclaim what little peace you can before the next melodrama. You crouch near a basin, sloshing tunics with practiced rhythm when an old woman sidles up beside you. It's Nehi, the estate's semi-retired herbalist turned unofficial gossip historian. Did you hear? She says, not waiting for confirmation, that the master's brother wants to build a new granary behind the stables? You blink. That's specific. She nods. Which means someone's pregnant, or someone's stealing millet. You're not sure how granaries and pregnancy correlate, but Nehi's logic is famously cryptic. A shadow falls over you both. Anketi again. She's holding an empty jug and wearing a face full of royal disappointment. I asked for honey wine. This is just wine. Before you can reply, she huffs and storms off. Nehi snickers. You know, when I was your age, chambermaids just used water and a smile. You nod, pretending to take this in. Then return to laundry duty, which now includes removing a mystery stain shaped like the Eye of Ra. You suspect beet juice or vengeance. By midday, the courtyard smells of soapwort salt and sandalwood. You line tunics along the reeds to dry your arms, tired, your feet sore, and your mind drifting. A breeze stirs the linens, and for a brief moment, everything ripples with light and silence, like even the gods are holding their breath, amused by the clamor of sandal politics and missing tunics. Then the cat trots by, carrying something shiny. You sigh. The sandals never stood a chance. Somewhere between the 5th fig delivery and the 2nd linen mishap, you decide it's time for a break. Not an official one, of course. You're not a priest or a scribe with sanctioned rest hours. But even a chambermaid needs 10 minutes to not be yelled at by a noblewoman with sandal trauma. So you vanish. Not literally, though. You suspect one of the kitchen boys has figured out a basic cloaking spell involving olive oil and dust, but socially. You slip out the side gate into the sun-drenched alley that runs between the estate and the market. The air outside is thick with the scent of cumin, animal sweat, and potential. The street is alive. Merchants shout about their pomegranates. Someone's playing a flute badly, and a goat appears to be engaged in a standoff with a basket of onions. You're not here to shop. You're here to breathe. Still, you pass by your favorite spice seller, Old Murtwy, whose face is more wrinkled than skin. He sees you, winks, and slips a pinch of coriander into your palm. For your soup, or your sins, he says. You nod solemnly and continue pocketing the coriander and wondering which sin it's meant for. At the honey wine stall, a familiar voice calls out, "You again. Come to poison your mistress or just yourself." It's Sahar, the brewer's daughter, who's been trying to flirt with you for the better part of a year. You smile and accept a thimbleful of her latest batch. It burns slightly less than last week's. Progress. Tell Anketi she still owes us for that jar she accidentally broke. You raise an eyebrow. You want me to collect that? Sahar laughs. Fair point. Tell the cat instead. You stay for a few more minutes, sipping, listening to the chaos of the market unfold like a badly folded papyrus. A boy walks by, balancing a chicken on his head. Someone drops a tray of lentils and swears poetically about Horace's knees. It's beautiful. Historians still debate how much free time lower-class women in Thebes had, or whether free time existed at all. Standing here watching a goat get drunk off spilled honey wine, you suspect the truth is yes, but only if you're good at vanishing. You head back reluctantly, tucking the rest of your coriander into your belt. Just before you reach the estate gate, you hear a crash. You freeze. Not because you're startled, but because you know that particular sound. It's the sound of Anketi dropping a perfume vial in a fit of pique. Again. You quicken your pace, slip in through the side and round the corner, just in time to see Anketi glaring at a servant boy with the intensity of a deity judging afterlife entries. Shards of alabaster glisten at her feet. Do you know, she says, pointing at no one in particular, how rare blue lotus oil is? You do. You also know this isn't the real issue. The real issue is that her favorite cousin just sent word that he's bringing a new chambermaid to court next month. Competition. You step forward, kneel, and begin sweeping the shards with careful fingers. Anketi watches you like you might become the next thing to shatter. I want it replaced, she says sharply. Yes, my lady. Imported. Yes, my lady. By boat, not donkey. You nod. Of course. She flounces away. The servant boy breathes again. Later, as you discard the last shard, you pause. The oil has stained the floor a deep blue petal shape that won't scrub out easily. You consider leaving it. Maybe Anketi will interpret it as a sign or a curse. Either way, it'll keep things interesting. You slip back to your duties, heart a little lighter. From the honey wine, your pouch, slightly heavier, with contraband coriander, and the market song still humming softly in your ears. You're halfway through arranging a tray of scented oil jars when you hear your name whispered. Not shouted. Not called, but whispered with the urgency of someone hiding something. You follow the hissed summons around the linen storage alcove and into the shadows behind the bathhouse wall. It's Hentepi, one of the junior maids, eyes wide and hair frizzing from too much steam. She presses a folded scrap of papyrus into your hand, glancing around like she's passing contraband. Technically, she is. Deliver this to the back gate guard, she says, barely moving her lips. You unfold the note slightly. The writing is clumsy, the spelling even worse, but the message is unmistakable. Meet me at moonrise, bring plum, you sigh. You're in love again. She nods solemnly. This one's different. That's what she said about the last three. You tuck the note into your sash. Delivery service wasn't in your job description, but somehow you've become the estate's unofficial courier of petty secrets and poorly written romantic ambitions. Later that afternoon, while delivering extra scented towels to the bath chamber, you slip the note to the back gate guard Miku, a man whose shoulders are too broad for most doorways and whose brain is slightly smaller than a date pit. He accepts the message with the seriousness of a temple scribe and promptly hides it under his armband. You return to your duties with the satisfaction of a job done quietly. Then, just as you're fluffing Anketi's floor cushions to her exacting fluffiness standards, she enters the room with the expression of someone who smells treachery. She narrows her eyes. Who moved my amber comb? You did, yesterday, to keep it from falling behind the chest, but admitting that would only fuel her suspicion. I believe it was with your hair oils, my lady. She eyes you, so it moved itself. By your divine presence, perhaps you say with a straight face. She huffs, which is as close to a chuckle as you'll get today. Historians still argue whether Egyptian noble households kept written records of servant behavior or relied on observation and gossip. Judging by this house, gossip wins. Nothing remains secret for long, except your network of messenger routes, hidden behind towels, nestled between jars, scribbled on scraps. Your own messages are rarer. You only write when it matters, when you can't say something aloud. Like the note you keep hidden behind your comb, a prayer to Heka, god of magic and medicine, scribbled during a storm when Anketi threatened to have everyone flogged because a scorpion got into her sandals. You never sent it anywhere, but keeping it made you feel slightly more in control. The whisper network of the house is alive today. Rumors are slithering faster than dust bunnies. The head cook claims someone stole an amulet from the guest room. The steward says it was moved for safekeeping. The cat remains suspiciously smug. You spot Mehnet lurking near the guest chamber door with a papyrus scroll clutched to her chest. She sees you, panics, and bolts. You give chase not because you care what she's hiding, but because she still owes you 2 linen wraps and a decent fig. You catch her by the dye jars. What are you doing with a scroll? She squeaks. It's a dream recipe. You raise an eyebrow. Dream recipes are usually scented oils and lotus petals, not pages of coded glyphs and a suspicious stain shaped like an ibis. She wilts. Okay, it's from the master's library. Stealing from the main house is a serious offense. But instead of reporting her, you glance at the scroll. It's a treatise on herbal aphrodisiacs, likely hidden there by Anketi's cousin. You sigh and hand it back. Next time, don't run. Just look more confident. She nods gratefully and scurries off. By sunset, you're exhausted from chasing secrets, soothing tantrums, and preventing a potential love triangle disaster involving one of the guards and 2 rival maids. You light a lamp, breathe in the rose-scented smoke, and glance out the lattice window. Below, the house churns with quiet schemes and louder footsteps. Notes slip between fingers. Eyes linger longer than they should. And somewhere, in the knot of it all, you, the glue, the ghost, the messenger, the maid, keep it all from cracking. Barely. You're not a priestess, but you've learned a few things about words. and their power. In this house, words whispered behind curtains and scribbled on palm scraps have more impact than official scrolls. Sometimes you need something stronger than gossip. Sometimes you need a little magic. Today's the day. It starts with a broken comb again, and Anketi shrieking, "This must be a curse." You who move the comb accidentally, while dusting nods solemnly. "Would you like me to check for signs?" She narrows her eyes. "You? Since when do you know spells?" You shrug. "Everyone in my village knew a few." "It's not a lie. Your aunt taught you 2 protection chants, 1 anti-vermin spell, and a highly questionable love incantation involving onions. You also read a few glyphs enough to interpret half a curse and all the important parts of ingredient lists." And Ketty gives you a reluctant nod. "Fine. But if my teeth fall out, I'll feed you to the ibis." You gather your tools, a lump of salt, a sprig of dried mint, some leftover natron, and a scrap of papyrus. You write protection in clumsy script and place it in the corner of her room, tucked under the obsidian comb box. Then, for flair, you sprinkle the salt in a spiral and chant something that sounds ancient, but is really a song your cousin used to sing about goats and rain. It works. Not because it's real magic necessarily, but because Anketi believes it is. She relaxes visibly. "Good. Now fetch me my lemon drink." As you leave the room, one of the kitchen maids grabs your arm. "Did you really curse her?" "No," you whisper. "I uncursed her. Can you curse someone?" You pause. This is where it gets tricky. You've never cursed anyone directly, not really. But you have written someone's name on a clay shard, pressed it into the garden soil, and whispered, "May your eyebrows fall out before market day." The next morning, Reket showed up with half her brows missing. Coincidence? Historians still argue whether these so-called household curses were psychological rituals or real magical practices. You know what you saw, and you haven't tested your powers since. Until now. You're approached again this time by the steward's assistant, whose scrolls always go mysteriously missing on Anketi's bad days. He asks jokingly, he claims if you could curse the head cook into losing her voice for just a little while. You tell him, "I'd need a feather, a broken plate, and a secret." He stares. "Don't worry." You add it's probably not necessary. He nods, but the seed has been planted. Later that evening, you find a chicken feather and a cracked saucer on your workbench. No note, but a soft implication. You don't act on it, yet. Instead, you make your rounds. A little more salt here, a protective symbol drawn in dust there. It's more about atmosphere than outcome. And perhaps that's the point, to make others feel like something larger is at work, that you have access to it. In truth, what you have is intuition, sharp eyes, and very good timing. By the time moonrise paints the courtyard silver, Anketi is telling everyone that you are the reason she hasn't had a bad dream in 2 nights. She even lets you light the oil lamp with a whisper. The fact that you fumbled the flint doesn't seem to shake her faith. You sleep that night with a strange satisfaction. Not power exactly, not control, just the quiet understanding that in a house full of secrets, sometimes the most powerful spell is the belief that you know one more thing than the person next to you. You wake the next morning to the sounds of low chanting. That's unusual. Chanting typically means 3 things. Someone's dead, someone's marrying badly, or someone's trying to impress a cat. In this case, it's the last one. You peer into the front courtyard to find a visiting priest performing a protection rite over Anketi's newly installed cat statue. It's a sleek onyx thing with jeweled eyes that follow you unsettlingly. Except this one isn't just a statue. It moves. The cat, apparently gifted from a temple in Bubastis, is alive, temperamental, and disturbingly judgmental. She's chosen Anketi's perfume room as her domain and swats at anyone who enters without an offering. You tried to bring her a dried fish yesterday. She hissed and knocked your vial of cedar oil into the basin. Anketi named her She Who Hears. She understands everything she says now, sipping fig wine while watching the priest fumble with incense. You aren't so sure, but you are certain the cat hates you. She stares at me like I insulted her ancestors. Anketi beams. She's discerning. You manage a tight smile and head to the linen closet before you say something unwise to a minor deity emperor. Inside, things are no less odd. The laundry basin is overturned. The window slats are smeared with red dye, and there's a scroll lying open on the floor. You stoop to read it. It's a star chart, one of the more cryptic ones used by temple astronomers. The date it references today. You're about to roll it back up when Reket barges in, eyes wild. Did you feel it? She asks. Feel what? The tremor. The floor shook this morning. A sign. You did feel something, a mild rattle like someone slamming a door too hard. You assumed it was Anketi discovering the cook's stale melon slices. But now that Reket says it, you head toward the temple annex. On your way, two other servants whisper that a bird flew straight into the pillar of Sekhmet's statue. Another claims the kitchen fire went out on its own 3 times. Portents, someone murmurs. Historians still debate whether the ancient Egyptians interpreted daily misfortunes as omens or just superstitions inflated by fear. But today, everything feels suspicious. At the annex, the priest is finishing his chants, wafting a mixture of cinnamon and myrrh. The cat sits absolutely still, tail twitching once every 30 seconds. Then, just as he ends with a benediction, she lets out a loud yowl and bolts directly past you. Everyone freezes. She's chosen, the priest whispers. You shake your head. No, she just hates me. But too late. Anketi gasps. She ran to her. Now you're standing in the middle of the courtyard, cat fur on your apron, holding a star chart and being looked at like an oracle. Again. You try to slip away, but the priest bows slightly. Perhaps the stars are guiding you. You consider telling him that the only thing guiding you today is a strong desire to sit down and a blister forming on your heel. Instead, you say, I need to check the linens. You retreat fast, the scroll clutched under your arm. That evening, you do what any practical chambermaid with a rising reputation as a mystic might do. You light a single oil lamp, sit under the palm in the back garden, and try to figure out what the stars might actually be saying. The cat watches from the wall tail, swishing like a metronome. You whisper softly to her, not a curse, not a spell, just a little prayer to anyone listening. Let tomorrow be boring. She yawns, which from a divine cat might just be a good sign. The smell of damp earth and river mud hits you first. It's the scent every Theban knows instinctively, the scent of the Nile, stretching, yawning, preparing to rise. Flood season is near. You're already knee-deep in preparations. Every household in Thebes shifts gears when the river gets that glint in its eye. Even Anketi, normally allergic to effort, begins ordering flood adjustments like she's managing a military campaign. Move my sleeping mat to the upstairs chamber, she commands, and double-check the perfume jars. I won't have them floating off to Nubia. You nod. Upstairs storage means climbing steep, narrow stairs while balancing crates of linen and baskets of dried lotus petals. You do it in 3 trips, nearly losing your footing on the second. Rayket is dragging straw mats across the guest hall, muttering about mildew. Someone's reinforcing the courtyard gates with extra reeds, and the steward is yelling about someone borrowing his boat plan and not returning it. Yes, you mutter, tying a rope bundle tighter because folding boats are famously reliable. The back storeroom is the real concern. It floods first always. So you raise everything onto clay bricks, spare tunics, cleaning powders, scroll fragments. You wrap the bottom shelves in oilcloth. You've done this before, but not quite like this. This year, the river feels impatient. Historians still argue how well prepared Egyptian homes truly were for the inundation. Some records suggest perfect efficiency, while others hint at chaos and complaints. Judging by the current frenzy, you're leaning toward chaos. By midday, the house smells of sweat and anticipation. Even the cat seems tense, pacing along the ledge like a sentry. You step outside, shielding your eyes. The sky is unusually hazy. Not cloudy, just heavy. The kind of heaviness that makes your bones feel like they've soaked in the river already. A merchant strolls by, shouting lotus cakes, eat now, float later. You chuckle, briefly. Then you hear the sound, low, distant, unmistakable. The creaking gush of water slipping over silt. The Nile is early. Floods come, someone shouts from the rooftop. Panic not quite. More like accelerated scrambling. You join the fray, helping lift a basket of scrolls out of harm's way, dragging a sleeping pallet to higher ground. The steward shouts instructions that mostly contradict each other. The cook has barricaded the kitchen with amphorae. And Keti emerges dramatically in full jewelry, carrying a prayer bundle of dried flowers. Take this to the statue of Hapi, she says, thrusting it into your hands. And don't let it touch the water. That ruins the blessing. You head toward the front shrine, the river's new song growing louder with each step. By the time you reach the household altar, just a painted niche with an earthenware god smile, the water is already seeping toward the courtyard. You place the offering carefully, whispering the traditional chant. Then, because no one is watching you, add your own quiet line. Let the water rise slow, and the drama even slower. That evening, the house settles into a soggy, watchful quiet. Enketi orders mulled wine and refuses to look out the window. The cat climbs into your lap, damp paws and all, and stares into the darkness like she's calculating river velocity. You press your ear to the wall and listen. The Nile is here. She'll stay for days, and you, chambermaid of linens and secrets, will float through it hopefully, dry, mostly sane, and with as few floating perfume bottles as possible. Nightfall drapes the estate in layers of indigo and silver. The Nile murmurs just beyond the courtyard, now swollen its waters pressing against the reed barriers with the persistence of a guest who didn't get the invitation, but showed up anyway. Laundry waits. It always does. You gather the baskets, damp linen robes, silk wraps, a tunic that smells faintly of vinegar and regret, and head for the rear veranda. Tonight, the laundry space is moonlit and mosquito-infested. The torches are mostly out, and only a thin crescent of light spills over the flat surfaces of basins and buckets. You kneel beside the washing stones, hippo grunts echoing faintly from the riverbanks like low thunder. Scrub, rinse, beat, wring. Scrub, rinse, beat, wring. It's almost meditative until you hear a splash. You freeze. Not the usual soft ripple of the flood tide. This is bigger, heavier. You glance over your shoulder, eyes adjusting to the dark. Nothing. Just reeds swaying and the silhouette of a date palm bending slightly in the breeze. You return to work, listening closely. Scrub, splash, scrub, pause. You decide to hum, part lullaby, part deterrent, part. I'm not afraid of ghost crocodiles. It helps. Soon your hands find a rhythm again. Coaxing oils and sweat from the day's garments. One robe is stiff with salt. And Ketty's ceremonial linen from yesterday's sun prayer. You dunk it twice, wondering what divine consequences await if the embroidery bleeds. Historians still argue whether Egyptian laundry was done by specific servants or rotated among households. All you know is you drew the short reed today. You wring out a sash and drape it across the drying line. It flutters like a temple flag in the breeze. The scent of soapwort and lotus oil lingers gentle and clean against the night's heavier smells, mud incense, something vaguely fishy. Then a noise again, different this time. Closer. You tense. But it's just Tahuti's sister. She appears from the shadows carrying another basket of damp cloths. You heard it too, she whispers. You nod. Probably a hippo. She shakes her head. Or the drowned priest. You pause. That's not comforting. She shrugs. My aunt said he drowned here, during a flood. Still tries to baptize laundry at night. You glance at the water basin. That would explain the stains. You both chuckle quietly because laughing in the dark feels better than bracing for invisible curses. You work together for a while, folding damp tunics and swatting bugs, not saying much. Just the kind of silence that says, I don't like the night either, but at least we're not alone. Eventually, she leaves. Her shift's over. You stay hanging the last few garments as the moon climbs higher. You take a moment standing by the pool, hands still wet, the night finally still. Then, as if summoned, the cat arrives, silent, smug, and possibly spectral. She hops onto a nearby urn and watches you. I hope you brought your own towel, you murmur. She blinks slowly. Taking that as a blessing, you gather your tools and retreat inside. The linens will dry by dawn. The hippos will sing. The priest drowned, or otherwise will wait another night for his laundry redemption. You drift into your pallet skin, still damp dreams already bubbling just beneath your thoughts. Tonight, the house is washed clean by river, by soap, by just enough laughter to keep the dark at bay. Dawn peeks through the window slats, but something is already off. You sense it in the way the birds are too quiet, the cat is too still, and the house usually creaking into life with grumbles and clanks feels like it's holding its breath. You're halfway through smoothing a tunic when Mehenet appears at your elbow, eyes wide. You need to come, she whispers, tugging your sleeve. You follow her through the servant hall, around the back stairs, past the herb room and linen press, until she stops at a cracked section of wall behind the garden alcove. It's a place you've passed 100 times, but never looked at closely. She points. There, through the slats in the half-broken screen, is a scene straight out of the kind of dream Ketty would pretend to have for attention. One of the guards young-muscled, tragically unaware of how loudly he breathes, is pressed against the mosaic wall, lip-locked, with none other than Reket. You blink. Your first thought is her. Your second is oh no. Because if you've learned anything in this house, it's that secrets don't stay secret, especially the steamy kind. You tug Mehinet back. Who else knows? I don't think anyone. Yet. You nod and retreat with her, both of you walking fast but casual, the way you would if you were carrying bread and not betrayal. Historians still argue whether domestic servants in ancient Egypt lived as passive observers or silent operators within elite households. At this moment, you feel very much the latter, because the woman you just saw necking by the papyrus basin is also the one who claimed to be saving herself for a high priest's cousin. And Enkheti, she doesn't share her staff well. You weigh your options. Tell Enkheti risk being seen as a tattler, or worse, the jealous type, or stay quiet and let the scandal bloom on its own. You choose option 3, contingency planning. You find Reket an hour later casually rearranging perfume jars like she wasn't just rearranging a guard's tunic with her mouth. You know I saw you. She freezes. It wasn't what it looked like. It looked like tongue. She winces. I'm not telling anyone you add, yet, Reket exhales. What do you want? You hadn't thought that far ahead? Maybe an extra bath token. Maybe just the satisfaction of her not yelling at you for a week. Nothing. Just be smart. This house eats secrets. Later that day, Enkheti calls you to her chamber. She's lounging with a bowl of sugared dates, unusually mellow. Have you noticed Reket being distracted, she asks. You consider the correct answer. She's been polishing the perfume jars for twice as long. Very thorough. Enkheti raises one thin brow. No further interrogation. Yet. Back in the servant quarters, Mehinet grins at you like you're some kind of master spy. You shake your head. I didn't do anything. But you did. You saw. You calculated. You stayed silent for now. Night falls again, and as you pass the garden wall, you glance toward the alcove. Empty now. Just fluttering reeds, a chipped mosaic, and the memory of something wild and doomed. The cat watches you from the shadows. You nod. Even she knows this isn't over. The tension in the house is now a living thing. It crackles in the air, like dry reeds ready to catch fire. Enkheti paces the courtyard, barefoot, eyeliner sharpened to an aggressive point, flinging instructions like curses. Where is my copper mirror? She snaps. And why does the new bread taste like confusion? You've learned to remain neutral during these storms. Be present, be useful, and most importantly, be unmemorable. Still, you sense something deeper, simmering. She hasn't touched her fig tray. That alone signals catastrophe. You quietly retrieve her mirror, freshly polished and smudge-free, and offer it like a peace treaty. She takes it without thanks and glares into her reflection like she's interrogating a suspect. You glance down. Her feet are covered in dust. That's rare. Enkheti never allows herself to be seen earthbound. But today, she stalks the halls like a lioness looking for a reason. She's up to something, she mutters. You don't ask who. It doesn't matter. In Enkheti's world, someone is always up to something. Rumors swirl faster than the Nile's eddies. The cook is hoarding cardamom. The steward misplaced a tax tablet. Reket claimed she saw someone sneaking out after moonrise, carefully omitting that she herself was doing the same. And you keep your ears open and your head low, which is how you end up overhearing the phrase, Send her away. You're in the hall, adjusting curtain loops, when you hear Anketi hissing at her cousin's voice, sharp as flint. She's becoming too visible, she says. She keeps the linens crisp her cousin offers. I don't need crisp linens. I need loyalty. You step back into the shadows, heartbeat thudding. She's talking about you. Historians still debate how much power noble women wielded over household staff. Some say they managed servants like generals, others like artists arranging a living tableau. You can confirm both. Anketi is an artist of manipulation, but today she's armed. Later, she calls you to her room. Her eyes are lined, her lips pursed, her mood unreadable. Do you still have that scent blend you made last month? The one with cedar and mint? You nod, heart thudding. Yes, my lady. Bring it. And yourself. To the shrine room. I need to be seen. You go. You apply the perfume with steady hands, tracing the scent along her wrists behind her ears. Across the collarbone, she insists, is her lucky one. She says nothing the whole time. Then, as you finish, if you were asked to serve another house, would you? There it is, a test. You take a breath. I serve where I'm needed, but I have no desire to leave. She studies you. Then, for a terrifying moment, she smiles. You're clever, she says. Too clever. You bow your head. Thank you, my lady. That night, you find your name missing from the laundry rota. No explanation. No task assigned. That's not a punishment. It's a warning. The other maids avoid your gaze. You sit by the courtyard pool, watching moonlight ripple across the surface. You're not sure if you're being groomed for favor or targeted for exile. Possibly both. The scent of rebellion hangs thick in the air, not loud, not obvious, but real, like the moment before a storm. Everyone feels it. No one says it. The cat curls up beside you, unusually warm and quiet. You whisper to her, if I disappear, tell the linen chest I said goodbye. She yawns. There are days when your duties feel endless, laundry sweeping, polishing anks until your fingers go numb. And then there are days like this, when your only task is pretending you haven't mentally checked out of the estate entirely. You stand by the outer gate, pretending to inspect a cracked water jar, while watching a trading bark drift lazily down the Nile. Its sail is striped with saffron and blue. Someone on board is singing loud and off-key, but free. You dream of being on that boat, selling your perfume blends in Memphis, maybe running your own little stall name, painted in red ochre, customers marveling at your rare desert mint concoction. You'd laugh and say it's a secret from Thebes. They'd never know it was made from kitchen scraps and luck. Dreaming again, asks Sahar. You blink. She's leaning against the wall, smirking, a basket of wine flasks on her hip. I'm pretending I'm rich, you say. Me too, she replies. Except in my version, I don't smell like barley stew half the day. She offers you one of the flasks. You glance around, take it sip. Sweet, sharp, and dangerous. You could leave, you know, she says more softly. You've got eyes, fingers that work, people skills, sort of. You chuckle. I've also got a mistress who thinks I might be a threat, or a prophet, or both. Even better, she grins. Ride the chaos. You return to your tasks eventually, but the dream won't leave you. You walk the estate as if you're already gone, stepping around cracked tiles, fingering curtain loops, memorizing the weight of the front gate latch. Your body moves by habit, but your mind drifts upriver. That evening, Enkhedi calls you again. Not for perfume, not for laundry, but to simply sit. She lounges in her chamber, eyes glassy, from fig wine hair unbraided. You're quiet today. I was watching the boats. Escape fantasies. You say nothing. She tilts her head. If you left, what would you do? You take a breath, make perfume, sell it in Memphis, or even Abydos. She nods. You'd be wasted on peasants. Everyone smells, you say, even peasants. She laughs briefly, then frowns. But you won't leave, will you? You hesitate. No, you lie. She seems satisfied, but her fingers tighten on her cup. Historians still puzzle over the freedom of movement available to Egyptian servant women. Were they bound by debt status or merely fear? Tonight, you're bound by something trickier. Timing. One wrong step, and the door closes. One right one, and the Nile opens. You go to your pallet late. The wind whistles through the lattice. The cat curls beside your knees. You close your eyes and picture the bark again. The sail. The river's pull. Someday, but not yet, you rise before the sun once again, as you always do. But today, it feels different, not because the tasks have changed, but because you have. The air is thick with morning mist from the river, and the house hums with that eerie stillness between two storms, one gone, one coming. You stretch your arms overhead and listen. No shouting, no clatter, not even the priest's usual coughing, just soft rustles and the faintest trickle of water slipping through the reed barriers. You begin the day with the bath basins. Enkhedi's not awake yet, but she will be soon, and the linen must be warm. The water, just the right shade of rose-scented. Your fingers work on instinct now. One scoop, natron half jug from the heated urn, a drop of oil. It's less of a chore than a rhythm, a hymn almost. As you light the incense cone, a shaft of sunlight pierces the shutter slats, catching in the smoke and painting the chamber in soft gold. You pause. For once, no one is barking orders. No one has misplaced a sandal. The cat isn't even watching you with judgmental disdain. In that quiet, you take a moment to look around at the home you know better than your own dreams, the stone floor smooth from years of barefoot pads, the lint in the corners you stopped noticing, the perfume stains you created scrubbed and recreated again. Enkhedi appears behind you, unusually silent. She's wrapped in her blue linen hair, half braided, holding a dried fig between two fingers, like she's considering whether it's worth the effort. Another dawn, she says. Yes, my lady. She nods. Not at you, but toward the light. We've survived worse ones. She leaves. No demand, no complaint, just acknowledgement. You smile faintly and move to fluff the cushions. One of them slips slightly, revealing a tiny scarab charm tucked between the seams. You don't remember placing it there. Maybe you did. Maybe someone else did. Either way, it feels right. The rest of the morning rolls out like papyrus. You assist with breakfast. Listen to a cousin's tedious story about barley shortages, smooth over a minor feud between the steward and the cook involving salt rations. All without complaint. Historians still argue whether servants in ancient Egyptian estates felt pride in their work, or merely endured it. You can only speak for yourself. Yes, your days are long, and your back aches. You serve a woman who can't distinguish between a divine omen and a sneeze. You scrub feet that never thank you, and hide secrets for people who wouldn't hesitate to blame you if things go wrong. But today, you walk barefoot through a house that runs because of you. You place the right robe in the right place at the right time. You know which perfume will soothe a tantrum and which joke will diffuse a scandal. You may not have the boat yet. You may not have left for Memphis, but you are not small. You are not invisible. And as the sun breaks fully over the courtyard, catching in your hair and warming your fingers, you feel for the first time in a long while exactly where you're supposed to be. And now, as the river settles into its lazy mid-morning glide, as the household slips into routine, and sandals finally stay where they're left, you too ease into the rhythm of another day done right. The cat purrs softly from her perch on the warm window ledge, the last drops of rose water still clinging to her fur. Somewhere in the kitchens, a tray clinks gently, a signal that breakfast is ready and no one's yelling about papyrus placement or date shortages. Your linen tunic is wrinkled, your feet are sore, and your hands smell faintly of cedar and kitchen oil. But your heart steady, calm, light as papyrus reed in flood season. In the quiet warmth of the servants' quarters, you stretch out on your mat for just a moment more, just long enough to listen to the wind push through the shutters like a lullaby. The same wind that once carried dreams of escape now whispers a softer truth, that even among sweat secrets and sandal squabbles, there is dignity, there is humor, there is magic. So rest now, chambermaid of Thebes. Let the Nile sing you to sleep with her old watery hymn. Let the scent of crushed lotus drift through your dreams, and let the flicker of oil lamp shadows dance across your closed eyes like blessings from the gods themselves. You've done enough for today. Tomorrow will come full of spilled honey, wrinkled linen, and perhaps even one more scandal by the mosaic alcove. But for now, sleep. Softly, deeply, completely.